Welcome to Deep Thought, Spiritual Subcultures in Black America. You know what? It's very interesting, right? Because, we all know about the New Age movement and all of that, which encompasses primarily mainstream white America, especially when they kind of got started in the 60s. Came to prominence in the 60s. There was always something there, as I'll explain. But started becoming mainstream in the 60s. And you had a lot of people following Eastern philosophies, particularly those of folks from India. You had a lot of hippies following like Eastern gurus, such as Osho. And you also had, I know of a group that's primarily in the Virginia area that follows, they practice Kundalini yoga and developed a community based on it and everything, right? And, you get a lot of people, even in the African American community, who, for whatever reason, they might leave the Christian church or something. They look for something and, might get involved in all of that. But, there's always been something in the black community. There's always been something in the black community. If you want to go down just in the Americas, I mean, if you look at the history, many traditions of Africans coming over to this country were erased, but they weren't always successful. Like if you look at, start with Haiti, Haitian voodoo. It's derivatively called voodoo, but it's technically called voodoo, which only means spirit. And that's a special subject in itself, because the role that voodoo played in the Haitian revolution is very much downplayed by many people. But it was actually the key to their success. So you have that there, and even though it's on the surface a Roman Catholic nation, the voodoo still permeates everything down there. To the point you still have secret societies down there and intact secret societies. And, and then, you look at some places like Jamaica, you got the Obeah and everything. And even in the United States, if you look at something like hoodoo, the conjure man, the roots woman, or the roots doctor, you've always had that. I mean, I did a video on, or at least got one coming. When should it show up? Yeah, I did a video where I kind of mentioned that. I was kind of joking about that, like, some of those southern women putting roots in some food. But you talk to some old heads and stuff, you got their books and everything, especially those people who used to play numbers. It's interesting. And even now, you got some subcultures out there. And it's amazing. Nobody really talks about them. I mean, you have some stuff, but, where they getting into some primarily African-based spiritual traditions that are they're not from India. They're not from Asia. They're not based on Western traditions. I mean, and it's an interesting dynamic, because it's a different, the individuals who are involved they're fascinating. They're fascinating. Like, they're not weird. They're just regular folk and stuff. They just practice a different type of spirituality. And it's actually has some level of organization. Like, I know, even though the ATR community is pretty much low key and they stay to themselves, they there and have a certain organization. Like in the United States, you have ATR communities for the Akan, Yoruba, Voodoo, and several Kemetic houses. You have several Kemetic houses, and it's very organized. Some of them have stores. If you look at some groups like the Saw Set Society, they have some stores in schools and all of that. Even that's some powerful stuff. I mean, their big thing, like the ATR communities, they're big on the rituals, everything dealing with deities, stuff like possession and everything like that. And very, very interesting. I was talking with a priest one time. He said, yeah, we there. And there's a reason why people don't bother us. But it's fascinating. And then on the other side, you have what someone had called the metaphysical underground. Now, these aren't really connected to, this is more like the street level. Like you get some cats, like they'll go to like some underground lectures or something. It's represented more by, you know, esteemed elders such as Reverend Phil Valentine L. and, you know, Bobby Hemmett. You know, some cats like Brother Panic. A whole bunch of stuff. You might even see, you'll probably, if depending on the YouTube circles you go in, you might even be able to see some stuff in, you might even be able to see some stuff like right here on YouTube, some videos and everything like that. And I mean, there's definitely, I know some sisters that really promote it. A lot of times though, there might be some slight differences or everything, but nah, but it's interesting in the black community because, in particular, because these groups are there. Because I remember, it's kind of like, if anybody remembers the first Blade movie, the very first Blade movie, I remember he had to get some serum. Like to pay for it, he would actually take people's watches and stuff. And I remember he went to this place and they had this brother in there, had this bookstore. You know, it was like one of those places you had to know where it was. It wasn't a mall bookstore, the out of the way place, and this dude had the serum for him. And you actually got cats like that in the community. And I was talking with this writer who was like touching on that, and she actually incorporated some of it into her books. Her name was may she rest in peace, L.A. Banks, the Vampire Huntress series, right? And she incorporated a lot of stuff that actually happens in the community. Like there's real groups out there. Now, of course, they're very tiny, and one of the reasons they stay low key because the black community in particular we're actually socially conservative and Christian. So you know, a lot of times you ain't gonna really know unless you know what to look for on somebody. Because a lot of them ain't going to be out with it. You might see some symbol on them, or like with the Khan, they got certain marks on them. As soon as I see the mark, I'm like, oh, okay, you're a Khan, aren't you? You know? And just to be clear, the Americans who practice the Khan traditional religion, maybe they might have some differences with maybe an Khan in Ghana, actual Khan in Ghana who practices maybe Christianity. You know, it's a different vibe, you know. And of course, you still got you still have some few conjure men out there. They still around there. they still around. Of course, we still have voodoo and you know people practicing it. And supposedly now you see some articles where you hear about more people embracing it, but from a personal point of view and just from what I'm seeing, I don't see it as much. I think people might do some superficial thing, like wear some of the beads or stuff and that, you know, the Yoruba might wear just to, you know, look cool or something. But I don't see the increase personally, or the significant increase. I'll put it like that. But they still there, still a subculture. And, you know, I wanted to like just mention because it's interesting, because I've said before, there's a tendency to look at the black community as one big monolith, you know, the connections. But, you know, and I've said before too, you always, you know, there's several subcultures and you have to know the nuances, but a lot of those subcultures are based on religion. Now you can or spiritual practices. Now, of course, you can say, well, you know, we treat it all the same. Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe in other eyes, but you know, there's a big difference between an Akan priest and maybe a minister of some small Christian church. There's a big difference, you know, or you know, some people who really embrace it. I've seen it. I mean, like some of the most thorough brothers I've ever met, like just ready for war and warriors, they are part of a Yoruba Igbe. You know, They totally embrace. I mean, they like just how they walk, carry themselves, and everything. Because one of the things with it is it is a difference in behavior. Like let's put away like the ritual aspects and any other, shall we say, supernatural aspects. There's a big difference in how they walk, carry themselves, how they see things. And I can see it a lot. Sometimes if I could see some brother interact in public, and I can already say, okay, he on something different. Now I was just sharing this really to open people's minds up to possibilities and what's out there. Because, well, I always have an agenda, but yeah, this is one of those agendas I'm keeping quiet for now. But just want to introduce, just say, hey, this is out here. People thinking different. They worshiping differently. They have a different view of things, and it's a powerful look. It's a powerful look. It's an interesting look, because like I said, Rom, I've interacted with ATR priests, Muslims, both Orthodox and what I would call the Black Islamic strain. Because really, if you look at the Nation of Islam or other groups like that, their strain of Islam is different from mainstream Orthodox Islam. In fact, there's a strong argument you could say it's Masonic. And speaking of spiritual subcultures, y'all ever deal with some Masons, some real Masons in the black community? Mindset, how they carry themselves, totally different. Like you see a Mason, you can almost say, oh, okay. Like if I see a strong, upright walking black man, I look for that ring. I look for that ring. I was just like, you got that ring on, okay. I see you. See that, like, the symbol they use. You know what? I've been doing too many videos this morning. I cannot think of that symbol's name. Man, I'm getting old. Yeah, I know I love it. But no, it's a different mindset. Now, somebody with their third eye open might like actually see the agenda. But anyway, right? Just wanted to put that out there. Anyway, y'all, keep rising and transforming. Peace.